The Madhouse, Chapter 6. Eddie led Christine through the long corridors of the old hospital, which fittingly looked like something straight out of a nightmare. The peeling paint on the walls was barely visible as the last rays of sunlight shone in through the dirt-caked windows. Nearly every doorway was crudely boarded up, and the faint smell of the decaying building filled the air. Christine listened carefully as Eddie briefly went over his plan for her segment, which they were going to shoot first. The electric feeling that had overcome Christine was a mixture of excitement and uneasiness. The hospital actually felt haunted and threatening, as if some evil presence were watching their every move. And it was so cold inside, even on this hot afternoon. Christine shivered as she timidly followed Eddie down another cold hallway, where he had a video camera set up on a tripod. "I'm going to cover all angles of the hospital," he explained. "I'd hate to miss any action, and we have to come back here again. That would suck." Christine watched while Eddie adjusted the camera on its mount. "This is a huge place," she commented. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Where do you think the ghost will most likely show up?" Eddie pointed the camera lens at her. "I don't know. It's hard to say. But I'm trying to cover the major corridors with my 2 cameras. Then I'm going to assign teams to stake out the different wings. They're going to be in constant contact by walkie-talkies and are to report any sightings. I'll be carrying a handheld camera with me at all times." "Oh," Christine said. "Sounds like a good plan." "Let's hope so." Eddie laughed nervously. He stared at Christine through his glasses for a moment. "I'm glad you're here, Christine." Christine felt her pulse quicken. "I'm glad to be here," she said, trying to decode what he meant. Was he glad that she was here to work on the project, or was he glad to see her in the same way she'd been glad to see him? Before Maggie came along, that is. She'd almost asked him about Maggie. Were they really a couple? Before she had a chance to say anything, the walkie-talkie on Eddie's waistband crackled to life. "Eddie, this is Stanley. Where do you want us to set up the generator?" the voice asked. Eddie answered, speaking into his radio. "In the main lobby. Get everyone together for me. I want to have a crew meeting in about 10 minutes. Christine pushed against a door that was sealed shut. "How come all the doors and windows are all boarded up?" she asked. Eddie shrugged his shoulders. "Probably to keep out the vandals, vagrants, and film crews," he said and grinned. "What's behind these doors?" Christine wondered aloud. Eddie put the lens cap on the camera and pushed against a heavy door at the end of the hall. To the surprise of both of them, it swung open with a loud creaking sound. Eddie poked his head in and coughed from the dust. "Let's find out," he said mischievously. Christine allowed Eddie to take her hand and lead her inside. His touch sent shivers down her back. Inside the room, Eddie and Christine gawked at a crude table that was placed in the center of the room. Worn leather straps with thick metal buckles dangled over the edges. Christine's skin broke out in goosebumps as she backed away from the table, which was obviously designed to hold someone down against their will. Accidentally, Christine bumped into the counter and a dusty case crashed to the floor. She sucked in her breath from the sudden noise. Eddie bent over and picked up the contents, which had clattered to the floor. Christine stared down at the unusual apparatus as a sweeping feeling of uneasiness overtook her. "What is it?" she asked. Eddie lifted back into the case a black box with a dial and several black cords and discs. "I don't know. It looks like some sort of an old radio, or maybe an early model heart monitor. Pretty creepy stuff, though. We'll have to get a shot of this room later." Christine had a gut feeling that they should leave this room. "Let's just get out of here, okay?" "Yeah," Eddie agreed. Everyone had gathered in the lobby of the hospital. Howard and Jason were rummaging through the ice chest looking for something to drink. Maggie had lit several lanterns, and the flickering light danced eerily across the high ceilings. Several faded oil paintings of serious-looking doctors hung high on the walls. Christine had to turn away from the creepy eyes of the pictures that seemed to be staring at them and following their movements. Brandon had been recruited by Stanley and was helping him fill the generator with gasoline. Julie watched Randy, who was making shadow puppets with his hands on the wall as she nibbled on some greasy potato chips. The excited chatter died down when Eddie and Christine entered the room, as if the king and queen of the prom had just arrived. Maggie slapped Howard's chubby hand as he grabbed a second soda out of the cooler. "Put that back," she hissed. Howard made a face at Maggie and yanked his hand out of the ice. Eddie stood in the center of the room and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming tonight. As you all know, we're here to capture the ghost of the deranged psychiatrist on film. It may be one of the most boring nights of your lives, or it may be one of the most exciting. That depends on our subject's mood. Either way, we're a team and we need to work together to make this happen. Maggie applauded enthusiastically until everyone else awkwardly joined in. Eddie raised his hands to silence the forced clapping. Okay now, in case any of you don't know the story, the deranged psychiatrist, or Dr. Blackwell, used to be the head of the psychiatric department here. Eddie held up an old newspaper article and pointed to the old picture of a dark, distinguished-looking man. He passed it around so everyone could get a good look. He continued. Dr. Blackwell was remembered as a cruel, vicious man who tortured his patients in the name of science. In fact, before the state revoked his license, he killed several of them by way of electric shock and frontal lobotomies, according to the papers. He was also the personal doctor of serial killer and local legend Michael Myers. The name Michael Myers sent a terrible sense of dread through each of the teenagers, who were all too familiar with the murders. Last Halloween, several teens from school had been brutally massacred by Myers, and 4 others had been butchered the year before at the big city hall Halloween party, which ended when the massive building burned and crashed to the ground. He had killed them in the Scream Factory. The memorial plaques in the school library to the dead students and the burned-out shell of City Hall were constant reminders of the very real threat that Michael Myers posed to their young lives. He preyed on teenagers, and he was never caught. Julie whispered shakily, Christine, you didn't tell me that part. I can't believe we actually came here. This is too weird. Maggie laughed out loud as Christine's dark-haired friend Julie whined fearfully. She wasn't afraid of Ghost or of Michael Myers, but she was afraid of Christine. The perky blonde bimbo posed a real threat to her and Eddie. Maggie spoke up, determined to drive the pretty girls away by scaring them. The boogeyman never dies. They say that Michael Myers comes here after he kills. This place is the only home he ever knew. In fact, he might even be here right now, watching us and seeing Eddie cut her off. Maggie, that is not true. Stop trying to scare everyone. Eddie gave her a sharp look and faced the nervous eyes of the group. There has never been such a documented report, you guys, so just relax. Maggie threw her hands up in the air. Well, duh. If it had been documented, then the authorities would have caught him by now, right? She stated victoriously as she watched Julie clutching harder and harder onto Brandon's arm. Maggie, that's it with the stupid stories. We have some serious work to do, Eddie growled through clenched teeth. Jason cleared his throat and spoke up. That's right, you guys, he said, trying to calm down the nervous whispers that were bouncing off the walls. Michael Myers has never been spotted here. It's the ghost of the deranged psychiatrist that we need to worry about. I've heard that he sometimes throws things and breaks windows and stuff. Right, Eddie? Even though Jason was only trying to help, his words only made things worse. Eddie waved his arms to get their attention. Guys, come on, get a grip on yourselves. Randy blinked and nervously stroked his shortly cropped orange hair. Is it true, Eddie, about the ghost breaking stuff? He asked in a hushed whisper. Eddie sighed. There's been a few isolated reports of paranormal activity with this particular subject, yes, Eddie continued over the uprising of voices. But none of it has been officially documented. That's why we're here, remember? They all nodded, remembering that they were on a ghost hunt after all. Christine spoke up. If we stay in communication with each other and work together, we'll be just fine. Remember, there's 9 of us and only 1 of him. We have bodies. He doesn't. A trickle of laughter tinkled across the room, and Eddie smiled at Christine for interjecting a little humor into the situation. Brandon raised his hand and asked sarcastically, So what are we supposed to do if this ghost attacks us or something? A few of the boys giggled nervously. Eddie sighed, aware that Brandon was just along for the ride. You'll all have walkie-talkies. If you encounter anything unusual, report it over the radio, he answered. But what if the ghost, takes my radio and I can't call for help? He teased. Julie gave Brandon a warning look, and Eddie ignored the comment meant to annoy him. Any real questions? He asked. Brandon finally decided to shut up. Howard timidly spoke. Yeah, where's the bathroom? I've had to go since before I got here. The teens broke up into laughter as Eddie pointed down the hall. He picked up his clipboard. I've assigned everyone duties for the first segment we're filming with Christine. Then later we'll be splitting up into teams of 2 in various lookout positions all over the hospital. Come up and get your sheets, now. Maggie was the first in line to find out what her duties would be. Script supervisor gopher, she said and pouted. What's that supposed to mean? Jason was standing behind her. He teased. Gopher, you know, like go for the coffee, Maggie, or go for a walk, Maggie. Eddie sighed. Oh, you'll be making sure that our narrator reads the correct lines, and in between shooting, I'll need you to get things for me. Maggie glared at him. I don't want to do that. Why don't you get someone else to do that? Maggie, listen, it's okay. Eddie placed his arm around her shoulder. Maggie, with your attention to detail, you're the only person capable of doing the right job. Maggie's unhappy expression melted as she soaked in every word of Eddie's compliment. Oh, well, since you put it that way, okay. Julie nudged Christine and pointed to Eddie, who had his arm around Maggie. Looks like your guy prospect already has a girlfriend. Christine lowered her eyes. I know. Bummer, huh? Big time, Julie agreed. She smiled at her friend. There's only one thing to do in a situation like this, she declared. What? Christine asked, wondering what Julie was up to. Julie winked. We'll go upstairs and make you look gorgeous. Brandon was still lazily sitting on a bench after everyone had received their assignment sheets. Eddie walked over to him. You're going to be the grip, Brandon. I need a strong guy to help me move the cords and lights and stuff like that, he told him. Brandon looked away. Why do I have to do all the grunt work? Eddie was patient, even though they were running way behind schedule. He knew that even one disgruntled crew member could cause havoc on the set. Because that's why you came here, isn't it? Brandon just sat there with a blank expression on his face. Eddie sat down next to him. Hey, buddy, what's the problem? He asked. Brandon couldn't possibly reveal the fact that he was getting scared in the creepy old place. He wished he hadn't come here. He stood up and snatched his assignment sheet from Eddie. There's no problem, man. Eddie patted him on the back. All right, then, let's do it, he said. You know, if we pull this off and actually capture something on film, we'll all be recognized as real filmmakers. This could be a great career for you too, Brandon. Brandon jumped in surprise as Jason cranked on the old generator, and it rattled to life. Eddie suddenly figured out that Brandon, despite his tough, macho exterior, was very afraid. Eddie lowered his voice and placed a hand on Brandon's shoulder. Brandon, I know it's a weird, creepy atmosphere, and you'd probably rather be kicking back with your girlfriend tonight, but we need you. We really need your help here tonight. Brandon shook Eddie's hand off his shoulder and grinned. Okay already. So where should I go? A glance revealed that Brandon was still nervous and uneasy about the whole thing. Eddie pointed to Howard and Stanley, who were struggling to lift an equipment case off the ground. How about starting there? Looks like they could use a little muscle. We've got to shoot Christine next in an exterior shot, out in front of the asylum. The dark shape crept silently through the shadows of the unlit corridor and slipped inside. He followed the voices of the teenagers and stopped against the wall. Through the 2 little holes he could see them. He could smell them. He could almost hear their blood pumping through the veins of their young bodies. Chapter 7. Christine carried a lantern in her hand and led Julie to the room upstairs where she'd left her bag earlier. They only had 30 minutes to get her dressed and ready to shoot her segment. Julie asked, So, what are you going to wear, Chris? Christine smiled confidently and unzipped her duffel bag. Voila, she chirped as she pulled the suit out of the bag and held it up in front of her body. Julie's face went wide as she stared at the suit. Chris? She gulped. I hate to break the news to you, but your threads are totally trashed. Christine looked down at the greasy black and white smudges on her favorite red suit and couldn't believe what she saw. Oh no, it's ruined! Tears welled up in her eyes. My makeup bag must have spilled. What am I going to do? Julie took the suit from Christine and held it under the light of the lantern. What is this, mascara? Ew. And powder? I don't think we can save it. Christine threw her hands up in the air. Now what? She sniffed. I don't have anything to wear. I can't go out there in shorts. Julie pointed to her own overstuffed suitcase in the corner. Lucky for you, I'm an obsessive overpacker. I might have a little something in there. Christine wiped a tear off her cheek. Really? She squeaked helplessly. Julie pulled a short black dress made of stretchy cotton out of her bag and smiled. I brought it along in case Brandon and I got the chance to sneak off later. You know, to turn 'em on. She grinned and held it up before Christine. I know it's not a professional-looking suit, but it might look all right with your black shoes and a pair of hose. Christine gave Julie a tight hug. You're the greatest. I'll take it. Julie closed the door as Christine peeled off her shorts and slid into the dress. She spun around in the tight garment which clung to her body. Well, how does it look? She asked Julie. And be honest. Julie smiled. Honestly, it looks better on you than it does on me. It's very sexy, Chris. Maybe a little too sexy. Christine looked down at the short hemline of the skirt, which revealed several inches of leg above her knees. I know. I hope Eddie doesn't get mad at me. I told him I'd be wearing a suit. Get mad? Julie coughed. You'll be lucky if he doesn't faint whenever he sees you. Julie sat Christine down on the cot and applied her makeup with a tiny lighted mirror she'd brought along. Christine practiced her lines as Julie styled her hair, sweeping it up off her neck and affixing it in place with little hairpins. Julie sprayed Christine's alluring hairstyle with some hairspray and stood back to look at her work. Very nice, she said. Meanwhile, Maggie Grossman savored every step down the hallway as she went to get Christine and her friend. She couldn't wait to see how bad the suit looked. So bad, she hoped, that they'd just have to cancel the stupid narrator thing altogether. Maggie's expression became puzzled when she heard the girls laughing behind the door. She knocked lightly. They weren't supposed to be laughing. Julie called, Enter the beauty parlor! Maggie opened the door and felt a rush of adrenaline pumping through her limbs when she saw Christine. She looked stunning in that revealing dress. No, she thought. Maggie composed herself. I just came to tell you we'll be ready for you in 10 minutes. Thanks for the warning, Christine said, noticing that Maggie was staring at her. Is something wrong? She asked as she blotted her lipstick on a tissue. Maggie pointed, her brows arched. Is that what you're wearing? Christine sighed heavily. Yeah, the clothes that I brought along got ruined in a major makeup spill. That's one of the many reasons I don't wear a drop of makeup, Maggie commented sharply. She glanced at her watch. I'll see you guys in 9 minutes. She slammed the door shut behind herself. Julie wiped her own long black hair with the brush and giggled. What's her problem? I don't know, Christine replied. I don't understand how Eddie puts up with Maggie. He's such a nice guy. She shrugged her shoulders. It really bites. Yeah, Julie agreed, especially when he could be going out with someone nice, smart, and pretty. Someone like you. She could use a little makeup, too, Julie added. It's not about makeup. She could use a new personality. I mean, look at the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He had a great personality that made up for his gruesome looks, Christine said. Julie howled. Yeah, I can just see you going out on a date with old Quasimodo. She imitated Christine. No, really, girls, he's a total babe on the inside. He's so fine, that hunchback of mine. Christine had to laugh. I didn't mean that I found him attractive, you geek, she explained. You know what I mean. I was just saying that looks aren't everything. They're not? Julie teased as she fluffed her hair. This is planet Earth, baby, where only the beautiful survive. Oh, right, I forgot, Christine commented sarcastically. Julie whispered, Speaking of babes, Brandon and I are planning to find ourselves a private room later on, if you know what I mean. Christine hesitated for a moment with a look of concern on her face. I don't know if that's such a good idea. She glanced around, feeling as if someone were watching them. This place is so dark and abandoned. We should all stick together tonight to be safe. Get real, Julie snorted. I can just see it now. Me, Brandon, and 4 dorky guys. Besides, Eddie told me that Brandon and I were going to be a team for the stakeout later. We've been assigned to keep watch in the East Wing. Really? I wonder who he assigned me with, Christine wondered aloud. I'm sure he'll be teamed up with his girlfriend. Julie looked at her watch. Oh, we better get down there. It's time for your big scene. You're right. Do I look okay? Christine asked. Julie rolled her eyes. Christine always looked great. You look fabulous, darling. Break a leg. A dark shape ducked down into the shadows of the forest and stared up at the building. The figure moved quietly among the trees. His eyes were locked upon the young girl silhouetted in the window. Christine felt self-conscious as she made her grand entrance down the staircase to the lobby. She could feel the silent catcalls firing at her from the eyes of the boys downstairs. Eddie sucked in his breath as Christine walked across the room, lighting up its dusty gray walls. His stomach fluttered as he soaked up the beautiful vision before him. Christine shyly looked at her dress and then slowly lifted her eyes to meet Eddie's. Is this okay? She asked softly. Eddie's throat was tight and dry. Wow, he gasped uncontrollably. Christine laughed at his stunned expression. Maybe I should try to find something else to wear, she suggested. No, he said quickly, averting his gaze from her long legs. You look great. It's a very nice dress. I'm glad you like it, she said, relieved that he didn't want her to put on something else, mainly because she didn't have anything else that wasn't trashed. Maggie could nearly feel steam shooting out of her ears. She pushed her way between Christine and Eddie and rolled her eyes at Christine. Eddie, we better get started. It's getting late, she reminded him. Eddie grinned at Christine. Come on, it's time. Stanley and Randy rolled the old generator outside and hooked up the cords to the lights, which came to life immediately. The exterior of the old hospital looked extremely creepy and threatening in the dark, with the lights casting an eerie glow across the old Victorian-style building. Julie cowered close to Brandon as he adjusted a light to shine directly toward Christine. Julie peered out into the endless black forest, full of distorted shapes that she knew were only trees. Her eyes strained in the darkness to see what was out there. Something was making her feel uneasy. She felt as if someone or something were watching them. When everything was set and Christine was in position, Eddie called, Action! Christine stood beneath the archway and recited her lines directly into the camera. Welcome to the abandoned Smith Grove Mental Hospital. I'm your narrator, Christine Ray. Join us tonight as we search for the ghost of the deranged psychiatrist who lurks the dusty corridors here, looking for new victims. If you dare. Cut, Eddie shouted. That's a keeper. Let's move on. Let's move it into the lobby now. Maggie waved her arms hysterically. No, that was all wrong, she protested. Eddie stared at her as she explained. The script says looking for new patients, not victims. Christine sighed, feeling foolish. She's right, I said it wrong. Eddie laughed. It's fine. The word victim sounds better than patient, especially due to the circumstances. Let's move it inside, everyone. He met Christine and walked with her toward the doors. That was great. Really great, he said. Christine smiled. Thanks. I'm going to have you walk down the stairs as you deliver the rest of your lines. It'll add effect to the piece, Eddie admitted. You look so totally hot. I mean, great when you entered the room. Oh, you look great whenever you entered the room like that earlier. I need to capture it on film. Christine blushed as she looked beyond Eddie's glasses and into his eyes, which were glittering with excitement. Is he attracted to me? She wondered. As they packed up the lights and began moving things inside, Julie looked back again into the forest. Still just motionless, just trees for as far as she could see. And then she saw something move. Julie whispered to Brandon, I just saw something out there, in the woods. Brandon glanced over his shoulder. It's probably just an animal, Julie. This is the forest, you know. I'm sure there's lots of moving things out there. Julie laughed at her own paranoia and snuggled up to Brandon's chest. You're right. It was probably just a deer or something. Before they entered the building, Brandon peered around. He didn't like the idea of something being out there, hiding in the dark. But everything was still and quiet, so he went inside and followed the others. A few minutes later, they were all set up inside. Eddie waved Christine and called, Lights, camera, action! Christine slowly moved down the stairs. We're inside the abandoned Smith Grove Mental Hospital for a wild night of ghost hunting. They say that Dr. Blackwell himself went mad after one of his patients. Serial killer Michael Myers escaped over 15 years ago and murdered 20 teenagers. The doctor disappeared, and the locals say he still haunts these very corridors, searching for his long-lost patient. Will the ghost of Dr. Blackwell, otherwise known as the deranged psychiatrist, appear tonight? Stay tuned to find out. And that's cut, Eddie yelled. That's it. Great job, everyone. Christine took a deep breath, and Julie ran over and hugged her. That was perfect, Chris. You're great, she cried. Even Maggie couldn't find anything wrong with Christine's performance. Every damn word had been perfectly delivered. Eddie then announced, we're going to take a quick meal break, and then we'll be splitting up into teams of 2 to stake out the rest of the corridors for the rest of the night. Suddenly, the old building creaked with a deafening groan that startled everyone. Eddie raised the volume of his voice and spoke over the worried mumbling of the group. It's okay. It's just the building settling. Nothing to worry about. But everyone still looked very worried. Okay, this has been chapters 6 and 7 of Halloween, the Madhouse. I know that these are shorter uploads than normal, but these Halloween young adult novels are like a third of the length of the books I normally narrate. Like the Jason and Freddy books have all been 400 pages long. These Halloween books are only 150 pages long, so the uploads are going to be a little shorter than they are with the Jason and Freddy books that we've been doing. Well, what do you guys think so far? Let me know in the comments section. Michael is definitely keeping an eye on everyone. Although it's weird, there's one part where it says the dark shape was in the corridor, and then another one where after that, where it said he was looking up from outside into the window. So I'm curious what all that's about. Is that a bait and switch, you think, or do you think that it's just Michael moving around in different places, following different people? Or is it two different? Is Michael one of them and somebody else is the other stalker? Who knows? We'll find out, I guess. And we'll find out soon whenever I come back with some more chapters of Halloween the Madhouse. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and see you next time.